Canon, the notion of the canon comes from church history. Like many of our modern notions, European church history, canon, first entry in the dictionary, an ecclesiastical rule or law enacted by a council or other competent authority. Fine. But as you go down the list, you reach the important definition for our concerns, which is any officially recognized set of sacred books. Okay, we're not talking of sacred books here necessarily, though there are some, like selections from the Quran and the Bible. For those of you who may have had training in basic Islamic sciences, the Kutub-i Sitte, the 6 established books of hadith, the 6 authoritative hadith collections are a canonical collection. It's the same kind of notion. And finally, any comprehensive list of books within a field. For years now, in many countries, especially in the West, there have been heated debates about the need for or the role of a canon of great books that define one's civilization. Who selects those books, people have been asking? By what criteria? To instill or impose what kinds of values? Or you may have heard of the phrase, oh, we always have to read the books of dead white men, which was one of the slogans of early feminism and feminist reactions to the idea of the canon, which is not to be belittled. There have been all sorts of critical perspectives, in other words, that developed in the last few years toward the whole idea of establishing a canonical set of books which every educated person must read. At first, the reaction to the idea of the canon was primarily or merely negative, and tried to get rid of all such approaches to canonical collections that had become part of education, especially in Western universities. But then, in the last 20 years, this debate has been taking place. A recalibration, an ayar, ince ayar, has again taken place. It is not so much the books that are selected that we should question. It is, the new attitude seems to be, it is not so much the books that are selected or the whole idea of selecting a few books that ought to be under question. It is rather how we approach them and what we do with them. A few years ago, there was a debate about, in the United States, where I spend most of my life, there was a debate about gay interpretations of ancient Greek classics. There were many who objected to that. And ultimately, some very conservative classicist, a scholar of the classics, himself rather conservative by political attitude, wrote a piece that provided the consensus for many at least, in which he said, look, these classics are nothing if they are not regularly exposed to new readings, critical readings. Some of them will be right, some of them will be wrong, but these classics are not classics if they simply sit on the shelves and are occasionally read because somebody wants to enhance one's social standing by citing a few words from Plato or Aristotle. These are classics because they are regularly exposed to interpretive effort by all sorts of concerns that appear in society from various new angles. It's just part of life. Live with it. About the idea of canon, there is a little couplet, very clever couplet from Küçük İskender, now that I mentioned gay interpretations, which I think goes to the heart of the issue. He says, Edip Atilla Nazım, her eve lazım. Canonization can make the best poets, artists, philosophers look stale, boring. imposed and hence objectionable. But we do not have to think of them as sealed and put on a pedestal, removed from the dirt of everyday life and its lesser arts. First of all, you have to think. I already mentioned that you have to approach them critically, reread them with new questions, new approaches, but you also have to think of them as existing in a continuum with pulp fiction, with B movies, with kitsch, with mediocre art, etc., all the way to everything spoken or communicated through some symbolic structure. There are moments in all of those media that can also make you wonder, understand, enable you to rise above the humdrum and the mediocre. They offer different sorts of pleasures. You would not have Pulp Fiction, the movie, which I like. Don't object to it, please. You would not have Pulp Fiction, the movie, if you did not have Pulp Fiction, really. And I grew up also reading Mickey's Plane, I have to admit. And Angelique, women's novels, thanks to my mother's influence, I'm so glad to say. In any case, the point I'm trying to make is obvious, I think. You don't have to think of the selected books, though I think they are wonderfully selected and a great collection of books. You don't have to think of them as on a pedestal, as hermetically sealed and removed from the non-hygienic aspects of lesser people. You should, of course, question the wisdom of the idea of great books, fine. Question the okay. Question everything. and get used to, by the way, please, this is, for me, this is your first semester. You have to get used to professors going over their notes and not finding their place. You should question the wisdom of the idea of great books, fine. You should question the fact that certain ones have been given such honor. But you should also realize that you cannot do it well without a proper introduction to humanity, without those analytical tools that I believe you will have an opportunity to develop in a course such as this one. So, what am I saying? Last minute. Should there be a course like this, in my opinion, in the abstract world? Should there be a canon? What is the bottom line? The greatest thing about the humanities, my dear friends, is that you need to come to grips and learn to live with the fact, disorienting as it may be, that there is no bottom line to many aspects of life. The fairy tale quality of papatya phala, you know, the loves me not, seviyor sevmiyor, is proverbial because it is wonderfully compact and takes into account the futility of trying